everyone, it's Whack Anime What If here to present you with What If Issei Had the Yandere Gear Part 2. Let's get into this. Currently, Issei Hyodo is still, in the front of the classroom, eating the teacher who is known as John's lunch, while John's looking at him saying, "Really? Why my lunch?" And he's thinking that in his mind, but it just isn't telling Issei anything, because he's kind of scared of him now, because he has this yandere girl over there, is what he's thinking. Because he saw those hearts in her eyes, and he just immediately said, "You know what?" He says, "All right, everyone, self-study. I've got to go. You know what? See you later. I gotta go get some milk. Just, if you see a substitute teacher, don't worry. I'm perfectly fine." And he starts running out of the classroom, and he left his lunch, and Issei just said, "Oh, free lunch, I guess." And he starts eating the food while watching Yuno absolutely destroy this guy. She is mounted onto him, punching him in the face, basically screaming, "Fight back! Fight back!" While the kid on the ground is like, "Please, ma'am, don't hurt me." And immediately Yuno says, "It's opposite day." And he says, "Then please hurt me." And immediately Yuno says, "Well, I just got your consent." And just started beating the absolute shit out of him. And he said, "I thought you said it was opposite day." "It wasn't." And after a few hours, Yuno finally got off of him, much to Issei's disappointment, because he was continuously clapping, giving encouragement. And she walked towards Issei, and Issei felt creeped out because her eyes still have hearts in them. No human has hearts in their eyes, is what Issei's screaming in his mind. Every part of his body is saying to run the fuck away. One part's like, "I'm very curious about where this is going." But he says, "You know what? I'm just going to listen to my body. I'm just going to run the fuck away." He's about to bolt off. He tells Yuno before he bolts off, he says, "Hey, you want to see something?" And immediately Yuno says, "Yes," out of curiosity, and tilts her head. Immediately Issei says, "You want to see some real speed?" And he starts running outside. He runs all the way to the front door, opens it very quickly, slams it behind him, and starts running away all the way down the stairs, because the bell just rung, and everyone of the Kendo team are literally ignoring what Yuno did. They're chasing after him now. And Yuno is chasing after him. Not before trying to chase down the Kendo team, which they're running in fear now, because they sense a sinister aura behind them. They are running from Yuno while trying to chase Issei. And cut to Issei's POV. Issei is currently running all the way down the stairs, running all the way out of the school, and going to this one lone tree, finishing the rest of the teacher's lunch, what he did snatch. He's in front of the tree, he sits down, he starts to eat the lunch. Then he says, "You know what, I'm just going to pull out my candy that I bought." He pulls off his little bag that he had on with him. He opens up the front compartment. He pulls out 3 chocolate bars. He's about to eat one, but he feels a presence staring at him. Then he hears a cat. He swears he hears a meow from a cat. He looks beside him, and he sees Konako sitting right there. And in his mind's like, "Oh no, this is mine." He says that in his mind, but Konako just gives him the kitty eyes. And Issei's like, "I must stay strong." And then she literally asked in a most adorable voice, "Can I have a chocolate bar?" Immediately Issei says, "All right, fine." And he just comically has tears in his eyes when he just gives her the chocolate bar. Immediately, Konako doesn't even take off the wrapper properly and just bites into the bar. And he says, "Hold up, you forgot the wrapper." And he unwraps it for her and hands it back to her after snatching it. And she immediately bites into it and says, "Yeah, I was kind of hungry, so I bit into the wrapper, and it didn't taste that good. Thank you." Immediately, Issei says, No shit, Sherlock. A wrapper isn't going to taste good." She just gives him the death glare and says, "You never will talk about this again." And Issei says, all right. I'm just going to continue eating." And she says, "I didn't give her permission to sit here." And Issei says, "Okay, I guess I'll go somewhere else." Right when he's about to get up, she grabs his hand, but says, "Now I do. Sit down," with a menacing tone. And Issei's like, "Do I have a choice anymore?" while shaking slightly. And she says, No, you don't." And in his head, he hears Michael Jackson says, "You done fucked up, boy." And immediately he says, "Shut up, Michael Jackson." He says it out loud. And Konako looks at him and says, Are you crazy?" And Issei says, "Depends on what you mean by crazy. Do I hear voices in my head? I occasionally hear Michael Jackson. And immediately Konako starts laughing about this because it seems kind of funny. And in her head, she says, this guy's kind of interesting. Maybe I can make some friends with him. Then she starts to talk to him. They're starting to bond a little bit. The bell rings, and he has to get to his next period in class. He has to go to gym class, and that's the worst class he has. He just sighs. Right before he's about to get up, Konako asks, what's wrong? I heard that long sigh. Are you okay? You seemed kind of scared when you sat down here, like you were hiding from something. Issei looks at her and says, you're not going to believe me if I told you. She says, oh, try me. I'll believe pretty much anything. Her thinking about how devils, angels, and many other races exist is thinking, yeah, this ain't going to be that unbelievable. Issei tells her about how he has perverted luck, how he was kicked out of 5 separate schools for stuff that was not him, and how apparently this Unagase chick's obsessed with him for some reason, and how he gets beat up by the kendo team. And she immediately hears, oh wait, so you're part of the perverted trio, right? I heard a lot of women hate you. You're like the enemy of all women. And Issei is offended by this. He puts his hand on his heart comically and says, that's kind of offensive. And Konako puts her head down and says, oh, I'm sorry, before Issei unconsciously head pats her. And then hears a purr. And he says, oh, I fucked up, didn't I? Immediately when he said that, she is still lost into the head pat. Then she realizes, wait, I'm being head patted. No one head pats me. And she looks at him and says, Sparta kick! And kicks him into the gut, and he just falls to the ground, saying, I didn't mean to. He's on the ground saying, help me, I've fallen and I can't get back up. He literally can't get up from that kick. And he felt like something broke. And Konako says, you should get life insurance, while laughing a little bit. Issei joined in the laugh, but it was kind of painful. And Issei says, can you take me to the nurse? I think you broke something. And Konako says, oh, the only thing I broke is your pride as a man. Immediately laughing it off and says, oh wait, you're actually hurt. You're bleeding a lot actually from your mouth. Are you... She's starting to get very concerned. Issei's eyes are starting to black out. He just closes his eyes. She picks him later on, Konako's POV. She sees that Issei is no longer joking and is actually very hurt, and she's concerned quite a bit. She's wondering why she's concerned about someone she just met today. Did he do something to the chocolate bar? Immediately thinking about this, no, it tasted normal. She picks him up with one hand, mind you, and puts him on her back. Starts walking to the nurse's office. Once she walks into the building, everyone gives her stares because the pervert that's on her back. They immediately think that he did something to Konako, and she just put him in his place. So they're cheering and everything, and Konako is wondering why they're cheering. Then the kendo team walk up towards her and say, we can take this from here, and picks up Issei off of Konako's back, and then immediately starts to drag him off. But Konako noticed something. They're not dragging him to an infirmary, so she follows them. POV change, Issei. Issei feels he's getting dragged. He thinks it's just Konako taking him to the infirmary like she said, before he fell unconscious. But he starts to feel off, as if the hands that are dragging them are quite literally very restrained on him. He feels like his arms are purposely being digged in by nails, and he feels an ominous sense. He opens his eyes and sees that it's the leader of the kendo team carrying him, and he notices this is not the way to the nurse's office. He starts thinking and says, no, not again, not again, not again. He starts muttering it out loud, and they all look at him like he's crazy. They drag him all the way into the storage room. They throw him into the storage room. They pull out their kendo stick, their kendo swords, and they start beating him. They go for the legs, they go for the ankles, they go for the chest, and they're starting to scratch him a lot. Issei's body already has some scars from the kendo team's ruthless beating, but they don't see anything wrong with it. They think they're carrying out justice. Issei is currently crying in fetal position, trying to avoid getting so many marks on him, so many hits on him. After all, he doesn't want so much damage. He's already grotesque with his own body. What do they want with him? He starts to scream out loud. The kiddos seem slightly feel bad for what they're doing. They stop beating him, all except for the captain. The captain does one thing which damages Issei a lot. She strikes him directly into the head, and immediately Issei goes unconscious, and the spot where the kendo sword hit him, right in the side of the head, starts to bleed. And not a little bit, it's bleeding rapidly. The kendo team, all their eyes are wide, and the kendo team leader just drops her sword and says, I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to. And all the rest of them are like, we gotta get him to the doctors. No, we gotta get him to a hospital. There's so much blood coming out of him. They immediately notice through his shirt that there's scars everywhere. And they're thinking, wait, did we do that? They see his legs more closely now, and they see there's a lot of marks on him. And they're starting to feel very bad. And Issei is muttering while going unconscious, why me? Why? I didn't even do anything. And tears are flooding his eyes. Koneko, who just caught up with him and found them in the storage unit, witnessed that last blow. And she was angry when Issei went unconscious. And he felt like his life was fading right in front of him. Koneko kicked open the door, and that's the last thing Issei saw. And then he had his eyes closed, and he was unconscious, slipping away into the darkness. Koneko POV. As soon as she witnessed this, she kicked down the door, and immediately ran up to the kendo team leader, punched her in the face so hard that she flew all the way out of the back window of the storage unit, and broke through the glass going into her skin slightly. And then she ended up walking towards the person beside the kendo leader, the vice president of the kendo club, and spin kicked her in the side of the head, causing her to have a concussion and fly back to the left a little bit, then running towards her and punching her directly into the face, so hard that it felt like it broke her face, and then hitting her over and over and over again, not stopping, even though she's screaming for her to stop. And Koneko's only response was, when he screamed for you to stop, begged for you to stop, did you stop? She screams out. She knows about him now. She knows that it's not intentional. He's not an intentional pervert. It's just situational. After all, not everything's impossible, so he's probably telling the truth, is what she's thinking. No, her instincts are telling her he's telling the truth. So she immediately starts wailing on him, wailing on the vice president, and then drags her by the leg and says, hey, have you seen Loki versus Hulk scene from the MCU, from a certain movie I like, The Avengers? And Vice Captain said, I have? Please tell me you're not gonna... She lifts him up from the side and just says, Koneko smash! And then slams her to the side of the floor and slams her over and over to the sides. And the whole kendo team that's witnessing this are all like, damn, she's strong for a shorty, is what one of them say out loud before Koneko turns towards that one kendo club member with like the most vicious eyes that say, you done fucked up. And they all start trying to run and scatter, but Koneko's too fast. An hour later, Issei wakes up and is now in a really fluffy bed, but feels oddly warm. So Issei looks and sees that he's in the school infirmary, and he feels something on his head. He touches his head and he sees there's a wrapping there. And there's wrappings almost all over his body. Huh. Just another day, Issei says. And then Issei starts to sob to himself, thinking, why me? Why can't I change schools? Why can't I ever be cared for? He says this out loud, in the softest voice, but someone's ears are twitching. And Issei starts to wonder, wait, why do I feel warm beside me? Like something's clinging to my arm. Immediately, yeets the covers off of him and sees there's a Koneko beside him. And Issei has the screen and play in front of him, says, you encounter a wild Koneko. What do you want to do? The only options there are yeet Koneko. Second, try to bribe her with a chocolate bar. 3, try to slide out. 4, run away. Immediately, Issei says, okay, what are my options are? He's thinking about this, and Koneko ended up waking up while she was awake the entire time. And she looks towards Issei and sees that her arm is hugging him. That she's hugging his arm. She quickly lets go of the arm while Issei is still distracted by his inner thoughts, and she sneakily sneaks out of the actual nurse's office. Like, she just sneaks out of there. Like she's tiptoeing out. And Issei's like, alright, I guess the only thing is to run. Then looks beside her at Koneko, who was there before, and thinks, wait, where did she go? Wait, was I hallucinating? Man, I was hallucinating. They probably hit me too hard, is what Issei thinks. He immediately goes outside. He opens the door, closes it behind him after he gets out of the nurse's office, not waiting for the nurse, considering she usually puts him through some pain whenever he asks to be patched up. So he could tell that she didn't patch him up. She's wondering who patched him up, thinking it was Koneko, but then again, it probably wasn't. I mean, she did go to her class. I did go to my class, and I was, like, dragged away. Wait, no, I was knocked unconscious. She dragged me to the infirmary, but I think the Kendo Club might have picked me up. They beat me, and I don't remember what happened. They could have just dragged me to the nurse's office in fear of being expelled or killing me, I guess. He sighs and then thinks, alright, enough of the depressing note. Gotta get to my next class. He starts jogging to his next class, and then he realizes, oh shit, when he looks at his watch. Gym's still active. He walks to the gym class, going to the gym class, immediately sitting down on the bleachers, after notifying the coach of why he was late. Once he sits down on the bleachers, everyone that's playing dodgeball all look at him in disgust, all the females do. And immediately, they turn the dodgeballs that they were throwing at their enemy team towards him. And he currently is very out of it, thinking about various things. Currently, he's thinking about what to eat later on, mainly because, well, he has to go to his job, so he's thinking about what to eat at his job. They give him some free food occasionally. He's very good friends with the owner. So while he's thinking about this, he doesn't expect this. A dodgeball straight to the face. Right by one of the worst people to get a dodgeball hit at him by, which is Sonia Citri, who's currently in gym. She threw it directly at him, not on purpose, but by accident. She meant to throw it at the enemy team, but they actually ended up deflecting it with another dodgeball. It bounced off that dodgeball and hit Issei directly in the face. Right after that, all the other females thought that was their cue to attack, so 17 females start throwing the dodgeballs directly at Issei. Issei already has a concussion, and it got worse when Sonia's dodgeball hit him, considering she accidentally used a little bit more strength than a normal human should use. And Issei swore he heard a crack sound. He's holding his head in pain, and immediately they start throwing it at him. They start pelting him, and they all hit his back because he's putting his back to them, trying not to get hit in the head again. Immediately, he has some tears in his eyes again, and he starts muttering, why? He starts to go into a little mental breakdown. Everything feels like it's shattering around him. Then, he goes unconscious, but he's not truly unconscious. POV change. Sonia, oh my god, I did not mean to do that. I mean, he's a pervert, but that was a little above human strength. I think I might have given him a concussion or something. I should go check on him, is what she thinks. She's about to walk up towards him, but she feels a very, very terrifying aura around him. This aura feels dark, sinister, and oppressive. No, not oppressive, obsessed with something. It starts to scare her, but oddly, it seems to make her more attracted to it. She doesn't know if this is her devil side speaking, but she wants to get closer to it now. Issei turns around, no longer facing away from them. His eyes are slightly glowing red. He's getting up out of the bleachers, walking towards the females, who now have more dodgeballs throwing at him. He's dodging every single one of them. Then he grabs one of them, and he throws it as much strength as possible, and it hits one of the females directly in the head, bounces off of her head, and hits 3 other females. Hits them so hard that you could hear it from outside the gym. It was such a loud impact that people could swear they saw a shockwave. And then Issei just blitzes in front of most of them and starts wailing on them, punches one in the face, lifts one up in the air with one hand, and yeets her across the gym, kicks one in the gut, makes her vomit up blood, and then kicks one in the vagina, which causes her to fall down. And immediately just runs everywhere, blitzing and beating the absolute dog shit out of everyone. And just grabs one girl, which is a member of the Kendo team, who was not there in that storage room, that also threw a dodgeball, and says, "Hey, remember when you kept on beating me with those swords? Huh? Just screams it out loud, so loud. Everyone from the outside of the gym could hear it. The coach is trying to break him off by getting behind him and trying to pull him off, but all that Issei did is look at him and say, "Really? Really? You're trying to stop me, right?" The coach says, "Yeah, I'm trying to stop you. This is enough. Issei, you're suspended for this." And Issei says, "Oh, but they weren't suspended when they did stuff to me, huh, you little bitch." And he just headbutts him and grabs him by the face with his free hand and slams him on the ground and starts slamming him on the ground over and over and over again. And Sonia's just watching this in complete horror before she appears behind Issei, trying to pull him off, but to no avail. Issei continuously slams the Kendo member's actual head to the ground till her nose is broken and bloody. Same with the gym teacher. While Sonia's trying to pull him off, is having difficulty, uses more of her devil strength. She finally manages to pull him off, and Issei just looks behind him and says, "Oh, you're the one that gave me even more of a skull fracture from that one dodgeball. I don't know what the fuck you are, but you're definitely not human, woman. Or should I say bitch?" And he starts to literally try to punch her, but immediately she dodges to the left, punches him in the gut, and says, "Sorry about this, but I'm gonna need you to stop," she says in a shaky voice. She can honestly barely even stand in front of Issei. She feels like this pressure's all consuming. She feels like it's suffocating. Immediately, Issei grabs her by the face when she's thinking and says, "I ain't gonna give you time to think, bitch. I ain't scared to hit someone that has glasses on." She says, "But I have glasses on." And immediately he says, "Wait, you know what? I won't hit you while you have your glasses on." And she says, "Why, thank you." He grabs the glasses and just hits her in the head with the glasses. And then she says, "Fuck, that hurt." Because it hit her skull very hard. And immediately Issei says, "Oh, now you know what pain feels like. You're about to be very accustomed to it." Lifts her up into the air and is about to sock her in the face, but Sonia uses some magic into her left hand and punches Issei. Then she realizes, oh no, I probably did a lot more damage. Right when she punched Issei, another crack was heard into his skull, and Sonia could visibly hear the crack, and her face scrunched up, and she started getting really worried. She fell to the ground, she got back up, she ran towards Issei at high speeds while he was flying across the gym. He's about to crash into the wall, but right before he's about to crash into the wall, a student opens the door at the exact wall that he's about to crash into. She sees a boy flying at him, and she immediately catches him. Although she gets pushed back a lot, but she bears her feet to the ground, almost pushing them into the ground, and she barely manages to hold him. She looks at him and realizes there's a lot of bleeding coming off that bandage that's on his head. But the blood looks so beautiful. So she puts her face closer to Issei, takes off the bandage, and sees there's a lot of blood coming from his forehead. And she feels the sensation she gets closer and closer. Sonia's running towards him and sees her. She thinks maybe he can help her. But I still gotta check up if he's okay. Then she sees the oddest sight. This girl is licking the blood off of Issei's forehead and drinking it, and gulping it down as if it was a smoothie. And this is very odd and very creepy in Sonia's point of view. POV change. Issei currently is waking up, and he's in a lot of pain. He feels like he was pelted by bullets. He felt like a whole SWAT team just shot him. And his entire head is in so much pain. He's actually crying. but he feels something wet and slimy on him. He opens his eyes and he sees this girl with blonde hair and a crazed look in her eyes, with a smile, licking his forehead where blood is apparently dripping, and it actually got into his eye, so he had to close it and wipe his hand off with his left arm, which the girl saw and immediately got off him and said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I don't know what got into me. You look like you need some help. I'll take you to the infirmary." She picks him up, and Issei is trying to say, "Nope, I don't need help. I'll get there on my own." He tries to say, but he honestly feels like he's about to pass out again. So he's being picked up by her, and he looks towards and sees Sonia running at them, and immediately says, "Can you hurry up? I don't want her getting near me." After all, she ends up, well, suspending me and putting many things onto my permanent record without even knowing the facts. Immediately, Sonia, who is running towards him, heard this, so she stops and thinks maybe he's not that bad. Maybe he's the victim. After all, he does seem injured a lot. He goes to the nurse's office, and I've been letting it slide. Even if he was a pervert, why am I letting the kendo team beat him like that? That's illegal. What am I doing? She starts to question life, while Issei says, "Can we get the fuck out of here before she stops questioning life and her existence right now? Because that face looks like it's questioning that." They look at her face, and she has like a blank face, like she's contemplating everything. And Issei says, "Alright, let's go ahead and go before that bitch wakes up." Okay? And Issei says, "Before we go, could you, like, limp me towards her?" Literally just picks up Issei. One of Issei's arms are wrapped around her, and she walks towards her and Issei pulls out a Sharpie and immediately starts writing on her face. And after he's done, this girl with blonde hair starts to laugh and say, "That's hilarious." Because it has strict bitch written on the top of her face, like on her forehead, and it has her with a mustache and a little monocle drawn on her face, and in the middle of her nose says "Princess Bitch." While they're both laughing, Sonia finally gets out of her state, and she sees Issei in front of her really close, and immediately she's starting to blush a little bit because she didn't look at Issei very thoroughly before, but he seemed quite attractive, is what she thinks in her mind, before knocking that out of her head and thinking, "Why is he so close to me?" and backing away. Immediately, she notices something that Issei has in her hand, a Sharpie, and it doesn't have a top on it. So she's starting to put one and one together, and she says, "Excuse me, what was your name, student with the blonde hair? And why are you not in dress code?" she asks while going into her student council president mode. Immediately, the girl says, "Well, my name is Himaka Toga, and I'm actually new here. I just transferred," she says with a smile, which honestly looks like a psychotic killer, and Issei is currently contemplating whether letting her take him to the nurse or not. So Issei's trying to slip his hand out of her shoulder and trying to walk away, and is almost out of the gym exit before Himiko Toga remembers something after conversing with the student council president and getting her forms situated after they leave. She realizes, wait, the boy that was injured is actually, where is he? She says, and Sonia says, "Oh, he's over there walking to the infirmary, I think." Immediately, Toga just looks right back toward where Issei is. Issei, who heard this, looks behind him really slowly and starts shaking, and his eyes are horrified when he sees Himaka Toga smiling with crazed eyes and says, "Get back here!" and starts chasing after him. And he just starts bolting. He says, "Injuries? What are those?" He starts running, ignoring the pain, closing the door behind him, and Himaka Toga's like, "Fuck this door." And she just basically just busts in like the Kool-Aid man, just busts that door off the hinges while Sonia Citri is just screaming about property damage. And immediately she's like, "Okay, I'm gonna go to the next class. I can't deal with this today." She goes to her next class, Sonia Citri does, and she gets laughed at a lot, and she doesn't know why. Until she sees her vice president, and she says, "Something's written on your face." She goes to the bathroom and checks, and sees what's written on her face. And she screams saying, Issei Yodo! While Issei, POV change, Issei is still running from Toga. He finally got away from Toga, and immediately the bell rings to go home. So he runs all the way to the front of the school. He feels like someone's watching him, which he feels kind of creeped out by, but he ignores it. I mean, they're probably just the haters watching him as he thinks. So he starts running to his house. Unbeknown, two girls are watching him. One is with red hair, crimson red hair, is watching him. And is with very interest in the aura he used before. She's thinking about adding him to her barrage. Then she thinks, maybe I'll contact a friend of mine. Well, not a friend, an acquaintance, and see if I can add him in through an unfortunate incident, she thinks with a sly smile. Before in her head thinking, that aura, that power, you will be mine, Issei Hyodo. In a creepy manner. And even her vice president is shivering right now, because she recognizes that face. POV change to the other girl who's watching him. A cotton candy-haired girl is watching him, and is now currently following him, while Issei is unbeknown, leading a stalker to his house. This girl is known as Yunogasai. She's still in her schoolgirl outfit, following him, and immediately Issei Hyodo still feels shivers down his spine, but just ignores it. He walks into his house, opens the door, closes it behind him, goes in the kitchen and makes him some dinner. He notices that there's a note on the fridge that's saying his parents aren't going to be home for tonight or for this entire week. Issei thinks, finally, I won't be called a pervert. Whew, finally. Today could not get any worse, he says it out loud. And then he starts cooking himself dinner. He starts to eat it. Goes up the stairs, lays down in the bed. Not before noticing there's a lump on the bed, and he thinks that maybe his pillows were just organized oddly. It isn't the first time it happened. He lays down, and he immediately starts to try to drift off to sleep, before hearing, "Good night, darling." And then he immediately says, "Oh, good night." And immediately is thinking in his head before going to sleep, who is that? His brain, who the fuck is that? And he says like, oh, it's probably just, it's probably just like, my mom probably sleeping with me. I mean, she does do that sometimes. Like she does when they fight, when my mom and dad fight, she like sleeps in my room with me. I mean, it's not that weird. And immediately his brain's like, but you do know that you just read a note saying that they'd be gone all week, and you haven't seen them, they haven't welcomed you, and you had to make dinner yourself. So, who the fuck is that? And he says like, oh yeah, good question, he thinks in his mind before freaking out in real life. He's like, holy shit, who the fuck is that? And he just pants and gets out of his bed, he falls on the ground, he says, who the fuck are you? Before the cover gets lifted up, and sees heart eyes, and sees the girl who spin kicked that one kid in class. And immediately Issei says, oh no, I'm gonna go get some milk real quick. I'll be right back. He immediately starts running towards the door before feeling a bear grip behind him. Currently, Yunagasai is behind him, giving him a bear hug from behind and saying, you ain't going nowhere. Before she accidentally slips while Issei is trying to walk, and she accidentally German suplex him. And she sees that he's been German suplexed and says, oh, I didn't mean to do that, but since you're unconscious, I'm just going to go ahead and... She picks him up bridal style, puts him on the bed, lays down beside him, and just goes to sleep. While Issei's asleep, they don't know, but in the closet, there is a blonde girl looking at them, just watching them. And that's where I end What If Issei Had the Yandere Gear Part 2. I hope you all enjoyed. I love making these. And if you love this, make sure you smash that like button. The higher the views get, the higher the chances are I do another part. So if you're wondering why certain what ifs aren't getting parts very quickly, aside from me trying to do the script, it's also because they just don't get enough support. So make sure you support this, smash the like button, make sure you get your friends to view it, and I'll see you